I thought I was working hard. Then he asked the question that changed everything. Have you ever been asked a question so disarmingly simple, yet so profoundly powerful, it shook your entire world? For me, it happened on a sweltering morning, the kind where the air shimmered with heat, even as the sun reluctantly crept above the horizon. The dew on the grass quickly evaporated, replaced by a humid stickiness that promised a long, grueling day. My back ached, my arms burned, and sweat soaked my shirt as I wrestled with the rattling old lawnmower. I was in my usual rhythm, a monotonous cycle of pushing, pulling, and turning, repeating the same motions endlessly. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Mr. Harrison standing at the edge of his lawn, just out of reach of the whirring blades, watching me. He was often there, a quiet, almost ethereal presence. He was a stark, living contrast to the life I was grinding through. Always calm, unhurried, a picture of tranquil grace. I kept at my work, pretending not to notice him, pretending the roar of the mower consumed all my senses. But a part of me was acutely aware of him, a silent observer of my daily grind. I pushed the mower forward, turned, pulled it back, leaving neat stripes on the dew-kissed grass. And then he moved. Slowly, deliberately, he walked across his lawn, stopping a few paces from me. The engine's drone filled the space between us, but I could feel the weight of his gaze. He didn't raise his voice to be heard over the engine. He didn't need to. He simply waited until I paused, wiping sweat from my brow with the back of my hand. The sudden silence, broken only by distant birdsong, amplified his words as they rang out. How much longer are you going to live like this? The question hung heavy in the humid air, suspended between the smell of gasoline and cut grass. It wasn't a question I could deflect or answer with a quick, superficial remark about the weather. It was a direct hit, aimed squarely at the core of my unexamined existence. My hands, still clenched around the mower's handle, froze. My breath hitched. I didn't know how to respond. A thousand thoughts, a thousand pre-programmed answers scrambled in my mind, vying for dominance. I wanted to say, just a little longer, Mr. Harrison. Just a few more years, and I'll be okay. Then I'll be free. I wanted to say, I'm working towards something big, building a future. It's tough now, but it'll be worth it. I wanted to articulate the grand plan, the delayed gratification, the light at the end of the tunnel I so desperately craved. But the words wouldn't come. They caught in my throat, choked by a sudden, brutal truth. Because deep down, in a place I rarely dared to visit, I knew. I knew that just a little longer had become forever. I knew I was working hard. Yes, harder than anyone I knew. But I wasn't truly moving forward. I was stuck. Trapped in a loop of endless labor, where every step forward felt like 2 steps sideways. I was like a hamster on a wheel, expending monumental energy, yet remaining in the exact same place. Mr. Harrison didn't press me. He didn't repeat the question or offer any follow-ups. No sympathetic nod, no knowing glance. He simply turned and walked away, back towards his porch, leaving me alone with my thoughts. And the deafening roar of the idle mower. He didn't need to say more. His question, hanging in the silence, was a complete statement in itself. That moment stayed with me, reverberating long after the sun climbed higher and the day grew hotter. It wasn't just a question. It was a mirror, held up by a man who had clearly found what I was so desperately seeking. In that mirror, I saw everything I had been avoiding: the exhaustion, the stagnation, the fear of change, and the quiet desperation that had become the background noise of my life. It revealed the uncomfortable truth that the forward momentum I perceived was just a tight spiral, leading me back to the same old anxieties, the same relentless weariness. This wasn't just a moment. It was a turning point. The initial discomfort I'd felt at his serenity during our previous lunch, along with that $2 bill and his profound remark. That freedom comes when you no longer have to sell your time to others, had now transformed into something far deeper. His question wasn't about judgment. It was about awareness. He offered no advice or solutions, but he gave me something far more powerful, an unavoidable confrontation with my own reality. And that confrontation, sparked by a simple question from an old man. Was the true beginning of reprogramming my mind for true freedom, a core tenet of the before sleep fire boost philosophy. The old way of living, the way of endlessly doing without truly living, was no longer an option. The question had been asked, and now the answer was mine to find. The fear and safety of routine. So why was such a question so difficult to answer? Why did Mr. Harrison's simple, unadorned query, "How much longer are you going to live like this?" strike such a raw nerve in me? It wasn't a complex philosophical riddle, nor was it a demand for a financial report. Yet, it left me utterly speechless, exposed, and profoundly uncomfortable. The truth is, such a question doesn't just skim the surface of our daily activities. It cuts deep into our most primal, fundamental fears. It hits us where we are most vulnerable. The fear of failure, the fear of change, and perhaps most painfully, the fear of admitting we aren't living the life we truly desire. For years, I had perfected the art of avoidance. It was easier, infinitely easier, to just keep moving, Keep working, keep existing, to fill every waking moment with tasks, with the relentless pursuit of the next dollar, the next deadline. This constant motion creates an illusion of progress, a soothing hum that drowns out the quiet whispers of discontent. We tell ourselves, with a forced smile and a tired sigh, "I'm fine." We repeat it like a mantra, hoping that if we say it enough, we might actually believe it. But deep inside, hidden beneath layers of busyness and self-deception, Mr. Harrison's question, or perhaps the one we secretly ask ourselves, gnaws at us. It echoes in the quiet moments before sleep, in the sudden silence after a long day, demanding an honest answer our conscious mind desperately tries to deny. We get trapped in routines, the predictable cycle of work, the reliable arrival of a paycheck, the familiar boundaries of our comfort zone. These routines, even when they drain us, even when they leave us feeling empty and unfulfilled, become our anchors. They are the known quantities in a frighteningly uncertain world. We cling to them, not because they bring true joy or prosperity, but because routine offers a sense of safety. They are familiar, they are predictable. In a chaotic life, predictability provides a powerful, albeit deceptive, sense of control. This is the insidious paradox of the comfort zone. It's where growth stagnates, where dreams slowly suffocate, but where perceived risk is minimal. We convince ourselves that stability, even a miserable stability, is better than the terrifying unknown. We tell ourselves that the golden handcuffs of a steady job are a blessing, even as they chafe against our wrists, chaining us to a life we didn't consciously choose. This isn't just a physical trap, it's a mental one. Our minds, designed for efficiency and survival, become programmed to follow these well-worn paths, reinforcing the belief that this is the only, or at least the safest way. This is precisely what the Before Sleep Fire Boost program aims to do: break down the subconscious programming that has tethered us to unfulfilling routines. But as Mr. Harrison's calm demeanor showed me, safety without freedom is just another cage. A gilded cage, perhaps, but a cage nonetheless. The bars may be fashioned from routine, from predictability, and from a steady income, but they are bars nonetheless. And the tighter we cling to this false sense of security, the more those cage walls close in, limiting our potential, stifling our spirit, and eroding our very self. The question, "How much longer are you going to live like this?" was not a random query. It was a profound challenge to recognize the self-imposed bars. It was Mr. Harrison's way of asking, "How much longer will you be stuck? How much longer will you allow the invisible chains of fear to dictate your existence?" How much longer will you trade your most precious finite resource, your time, for a life that doesn't truly align with your deepest desires? His question wasn't about judgment, but about liberation. It was an invitation to look beyond the immediate demands of survival and confront a larger truth, that the life I was living was a choice and therefore could be changed. The silence that followed his question wasn't empty. It was pregnant with possibility, a space for raw, unfiltered self-reflection. It forced me to confront the uncomfortable reality. That my fear of the unknown was far greater than my desire for true fulfillment. It was a moment of deep internal reckoning, a sharp realization that the comfort I thought I'd found in routine was a sophisticated form of self-imprisonment. And the key to unlocking that cage, I was beginning to understand, lay not in external circumstances, but in the internal reprogramming of my own mind. The journey to true freedom doesn't begin with a grand financial plan, but with the courage to honestly answer that simple, soul-piercing question. A new perspective, the seed of freedom. That question, simple in its phrasing yet so utterly impactful, how much longer are you going to live like this, didn't just stun me. It shattered my old way of thinking. It was as if a tiny, almost imperceptible crack appeared in the rigid shell of my old beliefs, allowing a small ray of light to penetrate the darkness within. This wasn't a sudden, blinding epiphany. But a subtle, persistent shift, like a small seed planted deep in the fertile ground of my subconscious. It began to sprout, slowly but surely, pushing against the rigid structures I had meticulously built around myself. In the days and weeks that followed, this newfound awareness compelled me to start noticing things I had previously ignored, things I had been too busy, too exhausted, or too afraid to face. I began to observe with a fresh, objective eye how I was truly using my time, not just the hours I sold for money, but every fleeting moment. I saw wasted minutes, energy squandered on trivialities. Precious hours sacrificed to fleeting comforts that did little to nourish my soul. I began to reevaluate the true meaning of freedom, moving beyond the simple concept of financial accumulation to a deeper understanding of liberation from the relentless demands of a life lived on autopilot. And perhaps most memorably, I started remembering long-forgotten dreams, aspirations I had buried beneath layers of reality and survival. These weren't grand, audacious visions, but quiet desires for autonomy, for purpose, for a life lived intentionally rather than merely reactively. This profound internal shift led me to a crucial realization. True freedom isn't a distant goal to be achieved after years of relentless toil. It's not a final destination marked by a specific number in a bank account. Instead, I understood it to be a daily choice. Every single day, in countless small decisions, we decide whether to remain trapped in the familiar, exhausting loop or to begin moving forward, even if it's just one hesitant step. This isn't about quitting your job tomorrow or abandoning all responsibilities. It's about reclaiming agency over your life, one conscious decision at a time. It's about recognizing that the power to change lies in my own ability to choose, not in external circumstances. This new perspective also fundamentally altered my understanding of true progress. I had always believed that progress came from relentless hard work. The more hours I put in, the more sweat I poured out. The closer I'd get to my elusive goal. But Mr. Harrison's quiet wisdom and my subsequent self-reflection revealed that this was only one part of the equation, and perhaps not the most crucial one. True progress, the kind that leads to real transformation and sustainable freedom, doesn't come from sheer effort alone. It comes from a combination of awareness, the ability to see your current reality without judgment, planning, the strategic foresight to chart a course towards your desired future. And most importantly, courage, the bravery to step outside the perceived safety of routine and embrace the unknown. It's about asking yourself with unflinching honesty that very question. How much longer am I willing to live like this? This question, I realized, transcended the confines of my job or my financial situation. It became a universal challenge, applicable to every aspect of my life. How much longer am I going to live like this? Applied to my mindset, the limiting beliefs, the scarcity mentality, the thought patterns that had kept me imprisoned. It applied to my habits, the unconscious routines that drained my energy and stifled my creativity. And most crucially, it applied to my future, the trajectory I was on. Which, left unexamined, would inevitably lead to more of the same. This is the true essence of Before Sleep Fire Boost. Not just a financial independence program, but a profound mental reprogramming. It's about consciously choosing to dismantle the internal barriers that had prevented me from living a life of purpose and freedom. The seed had been planted, and now it was time to nurture it. To cultivate the awareness, planning, and courage needed to truly live the life I desired, not just exist in the one I had unconsciously accepted. lessons, and actionable steps. So, what can you do if, like me, you hear that soul-piercing question tonight, whether it comes from an unexpected stranger, a wise old man, or the quiet whisper of your own conscience? How can you act when the illusion of being fine begins to crack, and the desire for true freedom starts to stir within you? First, and perhaps most challenging, is the call to be honest with yourself. This isn't about judgment or self-recrimination. It's about clear, compassionate self-awareness. Acknowledge where you truly are. Acknowledge the exhaustion, the dissatisfaction, the feeling of being stuck in a loop. For years, I avoided this truth, hiding behind busyness. And the perceived necessity of my hard work. I told myself stories of future rewards, of eventual liberation, anything to avoid confronting the present reality. But until you can look squarely in the mirror and say, yes, this is where I am, and I don't want to live like this anymore, true progress remains out of reach. This honesty is the foundation of the before sleep fire boost philosophy. Recognizing your starting point is essential before you can program your mind for a different destination. Once you embrace that honesty, the next crucial step is to start small. The idea of changing your entire life, escaping a financial trap, or reprogramming decades of habits can feel overwhelming. That overwhelm often leads to paralysis. You don't need to change everything at once. In fact, trying to do so often leads to burnout and a quick return to old patterns. Think of it like building a muscle. You start with light weights, not the heaviest in the gym. Instead, ask yourself two simple yet powerful questions. Ideally as part of your before sleep fire boost ritual, allowing your subconscious mind to work on them overnight. What am I tolerating that I no longer want to? This question focuses on identifying energy drains, the sources of minor or not so minor suffering you've simply accepted as just the way it is. That could be a part of your job that saps your soul, a habit that leaves you drained rather than energized, or a commitment you took on out of obligation, not desire. Identify one specific thing you're tolerating that dulls your spirit or wastes your time. For me, it was the relentless, mindless pursuit of more without stopping to ask why. It was the feeling that every minute had to be productive, had to earn. What's one tiny step I can take tomorrow to move towards freedom? Once you've identified something you're tolerating, shift your focus to one concrete, manageable action. This isn't about solving the entire problem. It's about taking a step. Could it be saying no to one extra task at work? Delegating a chore you hate? Spending 15 minutes doing something purely for enjoyment, guilt-free? Researching a new skill? For instance, after Mr. Harrison's question, my one step was simply to observe my hurried eating without judgment for a few meals. Then it was to intentionally slow down, even just for the first 5 bites of lunch. These tiny changes, almost imperceptible to others, yet monumental internally. Remember, true freedom isn't a sudden leap into a different life. It's built one step at a time, a steady ascent, not a desperate jump off a cliff. Every small act of honesty, every conscious choice to break a tolerance, every intentional move towards agency builds momentum. These seemingly insignificant actions, repeated consistently, will reprogram your mind, little by little, for freedom. They lay the groundwork for a life lived on your own terms. Unburdened by fear or external pressures. Every profound transformation, every journey toward greater agency and peace begins with a question and the willingness to truly listen to it. Five, conclusion. Embracing the question. Tonight, as the day winds down and you prepare for rest, I urge you to carry with you this single powerful question. How much longer are you going to live like this? Let it echo gently in your mind, not to create anxiety or guilt, but as a gentle catalyst. This isn't about shaming yourself for where you are, but about sparking a profound and necessary shift. It's an invitation to liberation, whispered from the depths of your own potential. This question, first posed to me by Mr. Harrison and now shared with you, is the start of a new dialogue with yourself. It's the essential reminder for the Before Sleep Fire Boost. The moment you consciously decide to program your mind for something greater, something freer. Tomorrow is your chance to answer it, not with words, but with action. To take one small, intentional step closer to the freedom you truly deserve. It doesn't have to be a grand gesture. It just has to be a beginning. Sleep well tonight. Don't dream of the routines that bind you, but of the boundless freedom that awaits. Wake up tomorrow not to fall back into the familiar grind, but ready to begin.